Let's recap where we have got to so far. Genesis 1 described the creation of everything, with human beings at the apex of creation. We saw that the purpose of this chapter was to show that God is alone and he creates merely by his word, and that creation was very good. We also saw that creation was about bringing order and purpose, and that as bearers of the image of God, human beings were to represent God in maintaining and developing that order, so that what was created very good would remain very good. Chapter 2 verse 4 saw the beginning of a new section of this primeval period, which runs to the end of chapter 4. Chapter 2 focused on the initial situation of man, how he was given a delightful garden to look after, and how he was provided for with everything he needed, but with one particular limitation. He was not to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This command represents for man the created order into which he fits. He is to be always dependent on God. In this way, everything in creation functions as it should. Chapter 2 climaxes with the creation of woman and the first marriage. It ends with a scene of marital bliss as they both fit together and together fit into this new world of order and purpose. This is symbolized by their nudity, of which they are unashamed. But our final chapters of this section are where things take an awful turn. The woman is persuaded by the snake into eating from the forbidden tree, and she in turn persuades her husband. In attempting to gain wisdom, they have attempted to assert their independence from God. They get their wish, but not as they imagined it. They are banished from the Garden of Eden, and so cut off from the tree of life. Their place in the ordered creation, which they abandoned in seeking independence, is now compromised. Woman's role in creating life is now frustrated with much greater pain, and her relationship with her husband has gone from being an equal partner to one of domination and struggle. Man's role in tilling the ground becomes very hard, and this bitter toil now characterizes his entire life. Nevertheless, even as God punishes them, he provides for them with clothing, and in his curse of the snake there is what is known as the Proto Evangelium, the first hint of the gospel. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. Even so, for now, the situation is one of total disaster. We noted that in chapter 2 there was cultic imagery in the Garden of Eden, signifying that Adam was a kind of priest looking after the sanctuary. But now God sets cherubim as guards to the way back into Eden to protect the tree of life. Cherubim were associated with guarding important places, especially temples, and later in the Old Testament, golden figures of cherubim will be placed on the lid of the ark, over which the presence of God will be enthroned. These heavenly guards show that whereas God had walked among the trees with man, now his presence has been restricted. Chapter 4 shows how Adam and Eve's sin now bears dreadful fruit. Abel's sacrifice is accepted by God, but there is something in Cain's which is lacking, possibly that he did not bring the best of what he had. Here is a crisis point for Cain. God warns him that sin desires to master him. Like Adam and Eve, Cain must make his decision. There are several parallels in chapter 4 to show the same things happening again as they did in chapter 3, but this time worse. Cain is warned not to sin. After the murder, God asks, "What have you done?" Cain is alienated from the soil. God banishes Cain, this time even further away. Yet again, in the punishment, God protects him. Now we have the beginnings of civilization, but here also sin increases with Lamech's boast about the murder he committed, or possible multiple murders. Yet this section ends on a note of hope. Having reviewed Cain's genealogy, we return to Adam and Eve, who have another child, Seth. It is Seth's genealogy which begins the next section in chapter 5. This is the chosen line which will come through Noah and then his son Shem. Here is another theme of Genesis, the chosen descendants of promise. We will see this again with Abraham, where it is Isaac and not Ishmael, then Jacob and not Esau. The chapter and section ends with a note that at this time people began to seek God.